Welcome back to Asia Inspires. Today we are discussing a very crucial topic about why mental health is so important in marginalized communities. I'm Asia, and today we have a guest with us, one of my dear friends, Valeria Delgado. She is a licensed professional counselor at associate, as well as a mental health advocate. Thank you so much, Valeria, for being here. And if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you into therapy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. This is truly humbling, motivating, and empowering experience for me. So I just wanted to thank you for inviting me here in this space. Um, a little bit about me. This is always like the hard question in interviews. It's like, what do I say about myself? I was born and raised in Honduras, so I'm Hispanic. I speak Spanish fluent. And I think we all have our own reasons why we come into the mental health field. And for me, I had my own struggles and issues growing up, and I had very key people in my life that were my main supporters. So part of the reason why I came to the mental health field was because I wanted to pay it back.
Yeah,
I wanted to pay the favor back and just be light in other people's lives. And if I can do that within my own community, um, I think that's all I want.
for sure. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And as you mentioned that you had your own support and I was fortunate enough to have my own support as well growing up, but that's not the reality for a lot of people, especially those who are in marginalized communities or consider themselves a part of the marginalized community. They don't always have support. And that's why conversations like this is so important, advocacy and things like that, which we'll talk a little bit more about advocacy later. But let's go ahead and jump right into why marginalized communities are in need of support and advocacy, just like you and I were fortunate enough to have.
Yeah, I think that marginalized communities, regardless of race, religion, ethnicity, um, it's so important to motivate and encourage mental health in these communities because they are faced with multiple adversities, racism, economic difficulties, many more. And these communities have less access to resources and support. So that's why it's important to educate the community and the resources available, and, including the majority culture, educating them on what's going on with um, minority cultures and how they can support them as well.
Yeah, for sure. When you talk about dealing with things outside, not just in the home, because there's a lot of stress going on at home, but when you go to work and you're dealing with racism and then you don't have access to healthy foods because of systemic oppression, then you're having to send your child to school hungry and then, dealing with the effects of them being hungry and being treated as if they're bad when truth of the matter is they're just hungry. Or not even having things like if you go to more affluent neighborhoods, you see yoga studios and you see nice parks. We can go for walks and meditating. You have healthier food options. But then when you go to communities where they are working class or, lower class, then you're dealing with fast food. You have a bunch of fast food and high sugar content. You have liquor stores everywhere. So when you're stressed out, you don't have access to go to a yoga studio, Pilates studio, whatever. Or like I said, a nice park. You can go walk to a liquor store or a smoke shop, and that's all going to affect your mental health as well. So just like you said, or even those who need access or who need to use a wheelchair and don't have access to get to doctor's offices or whatever because everywhere doesn't have wheelchair accessible entrances and exits and things like that. So all of that stress is going to affect the mental health, right?
Absolutely,
Okay,
absolutely.
so let's jump right into the questions. We have 5 questions. The first question is, how can therapy provide a safe and inclusive space for individuals from marginalized communities to explore their experiences and heal from the effects of discrimination? And if
Yeah,
I need
so
to repeat the question,
got you. So I think therapy is all about creating a safe space. But I think it's crucial for therapists to create a safe space for individuals from minority cultures, minority groups, because this is probably going to therapy for them is probably like very scary. And especially if it's with a therapist from the majority culture or a different culture, it might be difficult for the client to actually be able to open up. So creating a safe space is key for the development of therapy and their therapeutic process. And I think that one of the ways of doing that is addressing cultural differences, cultural impacts in the client's life, addressing different, if it's race, making sure that the therapist is aware of race. Is it language barriers? Making sure that the therapist can provide the right services in regards to language, and adjusting the therapist's approach to what the client truly needs, not just emotionally, but also racially, ethnically. Again, I'm bringing language and everything, just helps in creating that safe space for the client.
Yeah, for just like you said, making sure that the clients feel comfortable, because you're not able to divulge information if you don't feel comfortable. If you feel like that there is a elephant in the room, like you said, just addressing the elephant. And in our therapy program, we are taught how to address those barriers between the therapist and the client, but also being curious about learning about other races, other ethnicities, other cultures in general, religions, and things like that. Because if you want to work as a therapist, you can't expect to just see people who look just like you, because mental health needs don't just they don't just it's not just for one type of person. Mental health issues affects everybody all the way around the world. So I'm grateful for our program. I do think that they taught us how to address those things, and I believe that that is what we're supposed to do as therapists, is to work through that. It's to not be like, well, they look like me, so I can't work with them, but to be like, you know what? I recognize I don't have your experience, I don't have your background, but you are the expert in this room, especially if we're talking about postmodern theories where we do look at the client as the expert and not the therapist. So just giving them that safe space and being curious, asking questions, just as you said.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that I thought about speaking was even the client might look like you, but they will still have different aspects or factors of their own childhood or their own identity that are different from us.
Yeah.
I'm thinking religion or gender identity, or even just a different economics, financial status. So all of those things can also impact on the individual's mental health and well-being. So those are things to consider, even if your client looks like you.
Yeah, thank you for addressing that as well, because I could be sitting in a room with a Black client, and that doesn't mean that we have the same experience. We grew up in different neighborhoods. We, maybe have a different socioeconomic status. We may have different access to stuff, or just different generation. If I work with an older client versus the generation that I'm a part of, we're gonna have different experiences too. So just because we're both Black or both women or both, heterosexual, doesn't mean that we are the same. So, like I said, thank you for bringing that up as well. Okay, moving on to the next question. What strategies or techniques can therapists use to empower individuals from marginalized communities and support their self-advocacy within and beyond the therapeutic setting?
Great question. I think this goes a lot in regards to technique, is really using the therapists themselves and actually being human. A lot of times we think about like the therapist needs to be just like serious, and like, no, sometimes we need to show our clients that we're people, that we're human, that we also go through our own things. So sometimes self-disclosure can be really, really beneficial if a client from a minority culture is struggling to kind of connect with you. I'm also thinking about, and I'm kind of going off topic here, but it's related. A few months ago, I saw a TikTok from this like labor and delivery nurse who kind of spoke about how She's a white woman, and how she treats her Black mothers to be differently, but in a way where she addresses how Black women experience more difficulties or are at higher risk while going through the delivery process. And I think that can also be related to mental health and applied into the therapeutic room of just really addressing, like, hey, your community, you are more likely to experience substance abuse due to just discrimination or systemic oppression and all of these things. So actually, I don't want to say, like, don't look at the color, but you have to look at the color. You have to treat people differently, especially if they're completely different from you. So I think it's just important to address that, those differences, and being like, hey, these are the things, these are statistics that have been seen. So I want to address these with you. That way you also create a better connection for them. More techniques is, again, I think you mentioned this earlier, allowing the client to be the expert and for them to teach you, but also during your free time, during your outside time, you also need to educate yourself on their community, on their religion. You might know a few things about their culture, but it never hurts to know more. It never hurts to educate yourself further.
Right.
So yeah, and when you do that and you show that to your client, like, hey, I was reading this book, or I read this article about your community, and this is what's going on, that also shows to your client that you care, therefore making it a safer environment for them to open up.
Mm-hmm. In addition to being an expert, or excuse me, not the therapist being the expert, but the client being the expert, I would just add, and also in addition to learning more about them, is learning more about other resources that could be beneficial to them. So outside of mental health, because if it's an economic need, finding out about resources that are providing finances, or finding out about healthier food options, or uh, the list could go on. You don't know the needs for every client, but whatever the need of the client is, just going above and beyond to making sure that you're addressing that as well. And then, of course, advocacy outside of the therapist room, because some people can't advocate for themselves, and they need people who are on the outside to speak up for them. To not to speak up for them, to understand what it is that they need, and then convey those needs to other people. Not just being like, oh, they need this, and you didn't even consult with them to know what they needed.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
About the client being expert, as well as doing your outside homework of reading books, and not necessarily looking at Hollywood's depiction of certain things, because we all know that that can be taken in the wrong context, but looking at articles that are not biased, but are actually based on evidence and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that has helped me the most with clients who are different than myself, or even within the Hispanic community, but have had different immigration stories or things like that, has been talking to people who have gone through similar experiences, or getting supervision on those sides, because it's all about making sure that we're providing the best services for our clients. And if that means we have to do our own research, that may be reading or talking to their people. I think that speaks a lot when you are in the therapeutic room with a client. So
Absolutely, because they can't heal or work through the healing process if they don't feel like they're being heard or understood.
absolutely.
Okay, moving on to the third question. How can therapy provide a safe and supportive space for minorities to express their feelings and experiences without fear of judgment?
I think that not only just minority groups, but everyone kind of has this sense of, oh, will they judge me? Or
Mm-hmm.
everyone else in my life thinks I'm crazy, so I don't know if what I want to speak about in therapy is going to make my therapist think I'm crazy. So that, I feel like that's a sense of everyone experiencing in therapy, but even more when it's with someone from a minority culture, when they might be embarrassed of their own culture, their own upbringing, or when the therapist looks different than the actual client. It's like, ooh, they don't know my story. So they might feel embarrassed for all the jobs that I had to take while my kids were growing up, how I had to risk myself for all these things, or having different opinions or different beliefs. So I think within the minority culture, it's even harder for them to actually feel comfortable. And I guess I kind of go back to the whole thing of using the therapist being a tool, and just allow yourself to be vulnerable, even just using yourself as a tool, and allow the client to slowly build that therapeutic relationship and that trust with the therapist so they can feel understood. It's going to take time. I told my clients, you're not going to trust me for the first session, and I don't expect you to trust me. Like, of course, you're speaking to a stranger about your deepest, darkest secrets. Like, allowing your client to understand that it takes time to build that relationship, and slowly being able to feel comfortable enough and opening up. And also, if the client is in the beginning, early sessions, the client says something and you immediately start judging, and the client notices that, they are more likely to not disclose future issues. So therapists must be able to go back to basic skills, and not judging, unconditional positive regard, because we don't know the client's experiences. Might tell us, but we do not fully understand what it's like to live their life. So if we start judging from the first session, it's going to be downhill from there. And I think this is something that many individuals from minority cultures experience in therapy. Minority cultures are less likely to continue going to therapy if they already feel judged or not safe in the first session. So that's something that mental health professionals need to take into consideration. Like, how am I presenting myself in the first session, and how can I create a safe space for the first session, even second, third session, to allow my client to keep coming and to trust me, even regarding our differences.
And that's why I'm glad that we're having conversations about this, because there may be somebody who ends up watching and they've never been to therapy and they don't know what to expect, and they think it's just like what you see on TV, or that they're gonna be judged. And so talking about it from two people who have gone through training, you're an associate, I'm working on my associateship right now, who knows what it's like to see clients and how to be a therapist. It can be reassuring, hopefully, for those who are considering going to therapy, that we're not supposed to judge you. That's not what our job, our role at all, to be judgmental. I mean, we can talk about our own issues that we've gone through. We don't want to be judged either. So we're not perfect by any means. To be able to judge somebody for what they've gone through or the decisions that they've made, because I don't know about you, but I made some decisions as well. Um, so just having a space, building the rapport with the client, and like I said, using self-disclosure, letting them know that, hey, I've gone through something similar, or even I'm familiar with this is what I've gone through. Not to make it about us, but to create a safer, more comfortable space with that client, so that they can know that I'm not alone in this. Whatever the situation is, I'm not alone in it. But I would also say, and we're going back to the report, even small talk, some things that have nothing to do with therapy, asking about, what your favorite things to do. What do you like to do in your free time? Tell me about your family. Tell me about your goals and your dreams and things like that. Just making the small talk so that they can feel more comfortable. And even myself, especially when I worked with teams, I told them, you can ask me anything. That if I'm going to ask you questions, but you're also welcome to ask me anything. You want to know where I went to school? You want to know, how old I am? If that makes you feel more comfortable, then ask me. I don't want you to feel like I'm just the only one asking you questions And you can't ask me, this is not an interrogation room. This can be a back and forth thing if that's what you want to do. But then I also think about maybe someone watching this has never been in a therapy room, but it's not like a doctor's office where it's that sterile looking white, where it's just like really, really white in there because they're trying to make it look clean. It's we use calming colors like tan or natural colors, greens and some light blues or light purples and things like that because those colors are supposed to bring about peace. Or some people even use aromatherapy like lavender or even eucalyptus smells so that it can help calm you down so that you're not feeling on edge. Now, it is natural for people to go into therapy on the first day and feel nervous about, like we said, talking to a stranger. This is a complete stranger that maybe you found about online or you heard about from a friend, but you still don't know this person. So, and like you said, telling your deepest, darkest secrets or the things that happened in your childhood or decisions that you made or whatever the case may be, it's not going to be easy. So we try to take different steps, such as making sure that the room is calming, that it's not just a bunch of clutter in the room, so that that person can feel more relaxed and like it's a safe space for them to divulge information. But also in the first session is typically going through informed consents, which is like going through confidentiality so that you can know what is something that we have to report, what is something that's safe, not, I don't want to say safe, because all information is going to be safe. And if we have to make reports, it's based on safety. It's based on making sure that the client is safe, or surrounding people are safe. Um, but yeah, to letting you know that we can't go call up our homegirl or homeboy and be like, oh, let me tell you what my client said today. That's it's illegal for us to do that. So you don't have to worry about your parents, or unless if you're a minor, then that's a different story. But you don't have to worry about like your friends, your Facebook friends, or family members, or whatever finding out about your information. That's up to you if you disclose the information. But we cannot tell them that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Usually first sessions are very paperwork and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of rules and informations that need to be discussed. But even while saying these things, you can be yourself. As you said, like if you want to talk to your friends, your friends about it, you can talk about it. But I'm not going to be posting on my Facebook. I'm not going to be calling my friends. I'm not going to no.
Mm-hmm.
So even using that time of quote unquote paperwork to also bring aspects of your personality and connect with the client, or even have those talking about the weather moments, like as you walk into this. Every time I walk my clients into the room, I'm like, so like, how are you doing? Like, it's really hot out. Like, are you staying hydrated? Like conversations like that help lighten the mood, even when it's a first session. So
Or how was traffic? Just little things to get them talking.
yeah, of course. That's the beginning of the therapeutic relationship right there. Trying to make them feel safe from the beginning.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, question number 4 is how can therapy help minorities cope with the impact of discrimination, microaggressions, or systemic inequalities on their mental well-being?
That's a great question. I think that once the rapport has been built, once there's safety been involved and established in the therapeutic room, therapy can help clients explore their feelings and their thoughts in regards to aggression, systemic oppression, microaggressions, by just being open, like, you know what, this is happening at work, and being able to just speak about it. A lot of times we just need to vent. We don't need solutions.
Yeah.
We just need to vent and being
And somebody
able
to validate.
exactly someone to validate our experiences and being like, you know what, like this is going on at work, or I'm just having a hard time every morning having to dress and look or try to pretend that I am someone that I'm not while I'm at work, and then having to come back home and kind of taking that mask off. Like just being able to express that with someone and for that person to validate and not be judgmental, that's the beginning of it all. Like that's how just someone to understand their situation is the first place. But also it allows for clients to accept how they feel and for them to validate their own feelings. Like, you know what, this is going on and this is really hard for me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
how can they learn to accept their feelings when society and inequality is not going to go away? For them to understand how it's okay for them to feel this way, and it's okay
Mm-hmm.
for them to change what they need to change within themselves in an environment that's not changing. I don't know if that answers your question or if you need
Yeah,
more
yeah, it
clarification.
did. Yeah, it did. And I also want to add advocating for things to be changed. So, of course, we're not just accepting that it's not going to change. Doing what we can to advocate so that things can be at least improved, even if it's not completely changed. Because I mean, it's taken years for us to get to this point, and it's going to take years for us to maybe even take another step towards progress. But if we continue advocating for those who can't advocate for themselves, then we will be able to see change. And that's one of our roles as therapists, is to advocate for those who are unable to advocate for themselves, or teach them how to advocate for themselves.
Mhm.
But just like you said, being able to give them that space to just vent, to just be themselves. I mean, to take off that mask and be their true vulnerable self, allowing them the space and opportunity to ugly cry, not just, be strong. And I mean, this is bothering me, but it's not really bothering me. No, it's bothering you, and that's okay. It should bother you. You're human. Ugly cry
Yeah.
if you need to. Yell, scream, scream into a pillow, do what you need to do so that you can feel better. Get it out.
Yeah.
We don't have to talk about solutions. We don't have to talk about, well, this is what you're going through and this is how you get out of it. If you just need somebody to validate your experience right now, that's what we're going to do. We don't have to go into
Oh yeah.
solutions.
Yeah. Express all the anger, all those emotions in a safe space. Because most of the time, individuals don't have a safe place to just be angry and
Yeah.
actually show that anger.
Right.
And in a therapeutic room where their safety has been established and you feel comfortable enough to explore your anger, explore your sadness, and actually feel those feelings in a safe place, like that's not what a lot of people have. And again, we're
Mm-hmm.
not jumping into solutions. If you're like, okay, I'm ready to advocate, I want to push for more equality at the workplace or at my school or in my community, of course, therapists, we're supposed to jump in if that's what you're looking for, but
Mm-hmm.
just allowing yourself to experience those true emotions instead of projecting your emotions onto someone else or displacing your emotions elsewhere, which is not healthy, and those are just yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up as well. I mean, all of this is, and I wish more people understood how important it is for you to be vulnerable in a therapeutic space, or felt like therapy was a safe space for them to be vulnerable, because we are faced with a lot. Our mental health needs are steadily increasing because of our quality of life is decreasing. Like, we're faced with work stress, and then home stress, and if you're in school stress, and then there's just stress in the environment, stress in society, with just all kinds of stress and all that on you. Like, you don't have to be strong. You can be um vulnerable. You can be, I mean, weak. We say weak is a bad thing, but honestly, like, you're not gonna be strong 24/7. There are gonna be moments where you're going to need to be weak, and that weakness is gonna help you to be strong. But sometimes we act like we want to be strong, and in actuality, it's weakening us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that um a few years ago I kind of realized this, but my own perceived weaknesses are perceived as strengths by other people. And being vulnerable doesn't mean that you're weak. Being vulnerable is a strength,
Yeah,
especially in this world,
it
especially
is.
in this society that we live in, because nobody is willing to be vulnerable. No one's willing to be open about their emotions. And it's beautiful as a therapist to see clients opening up about their emotions and allowing themselves to be vulnerable and express those feelings and feel those feelings in a society where we are taught to, nope, no feelings. So
Our last question is, how can therapy help minorities build resilience and a positive self-identity in the face of societal challenges?
awesome. Coping skills. I think one of the things, after processing emotions, after everything that we've talked about today, I think that therapy is a good way to learn coping skills, healthy coping skills, because it's easy to just open the pantry and get a bottle of wine, or not walk to a park, walk to a liquor store or the smoke shop and just use something to de-stress. It's easy, of course, but those are not going to help you in the long run. Those are just going to make you fall into a deeper hole. So I think, first of all, learning and applying those coping skills learned in therapy is the beginning of just allowing yourself to accept and validate your own feelings in a healthy way to help you move forward.
Yes.
I think it's really hard, especially in the society that we live in, to accept all the systemic oppression that's going on. It's hard to have to accept it, and we shouldn't accept it. We shouldn't accept it. But what therapy should help clients is to accept that we have a role and that we can advocate for ourselves and advocate for others. And I'm not saying advocate like go and protest. No, it's advocate for your daughter, advocate for your son, for your sister, teach them healthy coping skills, tell them that they can achieve their dreams and goals. That's advocating.
Yeah, it is.
So yeah, so allowing clients to learn healthy coping skills and learn how they can slowly change their environment. It might be their environment at home, it might be their environment with their friends, with their partners, but that is advocating, and that builds resilience, and that builds the motivation to improve oneself, always not accepting the societal environment, but accepting that we can make a change within ourselves and within our own small communities. And if therapy helps one person, we're helping an entire system. We're helping an entire family. So yeah.
And I would add, even something like group therapy can be beneficial because you're around people who may experience something very similar, and it can help you feel like you're not alone in the situation. Now, everybody's individual experience is not going to be identical, but oh, this happened to you when you were 7. Oh my gosh, it happened to me when I was 7 too. And then that's just having a common experience can help you feel validated, can help you feel a little bit better. I mean, I know people a lot of people are nervous about being in group therapy because they're like, oh, I gotta talk. And I was already nervous just meeting with a therapist, one stranger. But now you're telling me I'm in a room with like 10 other people. We're all strangers plus a therapist. That's a lot. But studies have shown that group therapy can be very, very beneficial. Of course, depending on your individual needs and what you can get out of it, but you can get a lot out of group therapy. Like I said, it can validate your experience and help you to see that you're not alone in whatever it is that you're going through. But also, like we've already said, just therapy allows you the opportunity to be vulnerable, to be weak, to put your bags down and just feel, because we get so stressed out sometimes, especially if you have kids and you don't want your kids to see you crying, or you don't want your kids seeing you expressing negative emotions or emotions that make you uncomfortable. But in therapy, you can do all that. You don't have to worry about somebody gonna judge you, or what if my child sees me crying. We are validating emotions here. And then, just like you said, being able to excuse me, advocate for yourself, advocate for other people in ways that I'm so glad that you said that advocacy doesn't have to be protesting. Advocacy could be speaking to, if you know you have younger cousins, talking to them about, hey, I went through this when I was your age, and this is how I got through it.
Mhm.
Or this is what I did, but this is what I should have did instead, or or it could be that you went the right route and you didn't go to drugs or alcohol, you went to working out or eating healthier, whatever the case may be. Just being able to speak to other people about your experiences so that you can help somebody else. If you help one person, you're changing the world. Honestly, if we all helped one person, we'd be helping a lot of people.
Yeah, and advocating can look different. Like you can advocate. Again, I was talking about advocating in the home, advocating with your family, but you can go to your youth group, and talk about, hey, let's talk about coping skills, or hey, let's talk about how we can support our community, or even your church, talking to your pastor or your priest or your rabbi of like, hey, like I want to create a fundraiser, I want to do something. It can look very different, and
For sure.
it's all about helping one person for that person to help two people, and those for two people to help four people. So it's a ripple effect. But I think that it's important for minority groups, for people who feel scared of therapy, to actually give it a try.
Hmm.
And for you might not click with one therapist, and that is okay. Maybe the
That's
other one,
okay.
like, that's also okay. And I'll speak a little bit about my experience. Like, I've seen therapists who are Hispanic, and I didn't really feel that great. And then I found another therapist who is white. And actually, I felt amazing with her. She was able to allow that space for me, regardless of our differences. Um, so I know it's also very important for individuals to find a therapist that look like them, because they can relate. But there's also the opportunity of therapists. Maybe you might not have a therapist near you, or if you're looking for a therapist within your insurance, and no Hispanic or Black or gay therapists in your area accept your insurance, there's also a possibility for someone who's different than you to be able to allow that space and not judge you. So I also want to make that point of, sometimes it might not work with one therapist, but it might work with someone else. And it doesn't, and you don't have to fully relate to that therapist. That therapist is supposed to help you. You're not the one who's supposed to help the therapist. You are there to help yourself. And the therapist is the one who's supposed to go in that journey with you. It's all about you.
Mhm.
Therapy, it's all about you. And if you don't feel safe, on to the next. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't work, on to the next. But I just want to motivate individuals who have these preconceived notions of therapy, or are scared of being vulnerable, to just give it a try. To give themselves some time, some space for them to be open and vulnerable. And yeah.
It's so important that you brought that up, that if one therapist doesn't work, that doesn't mean therapy just doesn't work for me. One person just might not be a good fit for you. Try another therapist. And if that one doesn't work, try another therapist. It's like if you go to a restaurant, if you go to, like, let's say you love burgers and you go to um Jack in the Box and you try their burger and it's nasty, are you gonna say, I don't like burgers anymore, I'm never gonna go eat burgers again? No, you're gonna go try somewhere else. And if that one doesn't work, you're gonna try another one. So it's the same thing. I mean, I know that's an analogy, but it's really the same concept. If one therapist doesn't work, don't discredit therapy
Yeah.
altogether. Just try another therapist. And then if that one doesn't work, try another therapist and just continue to try therapists. But also I would say, let your therapist know if something is not working out. If you don't feel like that
Mhm.
they're validating you, say that, hey, and in our last session, I didn't feel like you were really validating my experience. I felt like you were just going right into solution. chances are they didn't even realize it, because we are human. Therapists are human. We're
Mhm.
going to make mistakes. We're not going to be perfect. Give them an opportunity to say, you know what, thank you for bringing that up. I'm so sorry. I'm going to do better. I'm going to try to do better, so that they can make that adjustment in the session. And then if they continue, if the issue doesn't seem to be solved, then go to the next therapist. But don't just be like, they did this and they asked me about my childhood, and I'm just not ready to go there yet. So I'm just gonna move on to the next therapist, because chances are that therapist is gonna ask you about your childhood too. Just say, hey, I'm not ready to go there yet. Can we just focus on this issue, or whatever? Um, but don't just move on without having a conversation with that person. And it can be difficult, because sometimes it does seem like there's a power differential there, but it really isn't. Like I said, like, the client is the expert there. So if you're not ready to explore, you may have a therapist that's going to push you a little bit. That's going to say, well, I understand you may not be ready, but exploring your childhood is a part of my process, because it's going to help me to understand you a little bit better and how you got to where you are now. But if you're not ready, I understand, but we will explore that eventually. But don't just be like, nah, they tried to do this, or they said something that I didn't like, so I don't want to go to therapy ever again.
Yeah, it's okay to have those boundaries. If I'm not ready to talk about my childhood, or I'm not ready to talk about my sexual relationships with a therapist, that seems
Hmm.
too much, or
Hmm.
any other. It's okay to have those boundaries, and it's
Yes,
okay
it
to have
is.
those conversations with the therapist. Again, it goes back to, if the therapist is not able to respect your boundaries, okay, maybe time to change.
Well,
But don't allow that experience to discredit all therapists or your mental health journey, because there's so many therapy modalities. There's so many therapists out there with different experiences,
hmm
different worldviews, that one might fit your own. It's like trying shoes on. Like,
yes, it
sometimes, or
is.
trying jeans on, for example. Like, some jeans are all jeans are size 8, for example. You will always find size 8 on every store, but they're all going to fit differently. So it's like, okay, I need to change sizes, or I don't like the style, or I want a pair of jeans with ripped jeans. I don't know. I just thought about jeans right now. I'm being a little crazy right now. But yeah, it's trial and error. And sometimes it might work the first time, sometimes it might not. So yeah, just allow yourself to um explore that, and allow yourself to work on yourselves, because we always have something to work on. We all do, regardless of if we are healthy, if we haven't had any traumatic things going on in our lives. We always have things to work on to become a better person for ourselves, for our families, for our partners. um so
The
I
bills.
do. Yeah, the bills. Yeah. So yeah.
You mentioned, well, we've talked about advocacy, and this is the one of the last things that I want to bring up is, if you do not identify as a part of a marginalized community, there are ways that you can be an ally. There are ways that you can help other people, like I said, for those who can't help themselves or don't know how to help themselves. And one of those ways is by checking your biases and being empathic. I've already made a video on how to be empathic. So if you've not looked at it, you might want to take a look at it, or just, learn how to be more empathic. If we lived in a world where everybody expressed empathy towards other people, oh my gosh, this world would be so much better. But like I said, check your
Mhm.
biases. If you see a person and you're like, oh, they probably A, B, C, and D, because they don't look like you, because they don't believe the same things as you, that's a bias that needs to be checked. Because think about it, especially if you're in a position of power, if you're in a position of leadership, like, how is that bleeding into your relationship with those who are under you, who you're supposed to be leading? If you feel like, oh, well, all blank people are this way, then you're going to, like, if that's your thought, that's going to lead into your actions and the way that you interact with other people. So check your biases,
Mhm.
be empathic. And of course, you can do that by getting to know people who don't look like you, getting to know about people's experiences, reading books, reading articles. Um, like I said, be careful about watching movies, but maybe movies or documentaries, and just interacting with people. asking them about their experiences. Now you got to do that in an appropriate way, and we don't really have time to go dive deep into that. But in an appropriate way, asking people about their experiences is okay too. For those who want to address their experiences, because not everybody wants to talk about it, and that's okay too. But also advocate through voting. I know there's a lot of people who are like, well, voting doesn't count. Well, it does. So
Yes.
advocate through voting. If you are voting for gentrification to happen, think about the people that you're pushing out of that community. Like, there are people who live in these communities. Homes are being torn down. Low income housing are being torn down and turned into nicer apartments. And not to say that lower income communities don't deserve nice apartments, they do for sure. And those environments should be improved, but not the prices raised, because then you have them increasing by $1,200, and then like they're already low income communities. Can they afford a $1,200 increase? No, but you voted for that, or you're okay with it. No, stand up for the people who, like I said, who don't know that things are happening, or who don't know how to stand up for themselves. As
Who just
well
say
as,
they can't,
said it again.
or simply for people that they can't advocate for
Yeah,
themselves.
yeah, yeah. If you notice that there are places where wheelchair it's difficult for people in wheelchairs to get in or out of buildings, advocate for that. If you see that an elevator is broken, or a ramp is it's just super difficult, or like blocked off or something like that, hey, what's going on with this elevator? What about people who can't climb upstairs even if they're not in wheelchairs? There are some people who physically cannot climb upstairs because of respiratory issues, or because of like bone muscle issues, who is just easier for elevator, if and stand up for those people. Y'all need to really get on this elevator, because just because I can walk upstairs doesn't mean that there are other people who can, who is easy for them to walk upstairs. And then last but not least, and of course I want to ask if you have anything else as well, but you can donate or familiarize yourself with organizations who are doing things that are helping marginalized communities. And I'm going to post some links in the description box, so make sure you check those out. But it's important for, even if, like I said, if you're not a part of the marginalized community, if you feel like you're good, to know about different organizations. So just in case you are having a conversation with somebody who says, I'm struggling in this way, you won't be like, oh gosh, I'm sorry to hear that, but you can listen and validate, and also say, hey, I'm familiar with this organization. If you're interested in learning more information about it, here's their website, here's their business card, here's whatever. Because you never know whose day that could make. Like, that could make somebody's whole world if they're like, oh, I'm struggling financially. If you're just having a conversation with somebody, or I'm struggling with my mental health, and you're like, oh, I know of this place who does A, B, C, and D for low cost or for free. And they're like, oh my gosh, I've never heard of this place. And now, like I said, their whole world is made.
Yeah,
Is there
yeah,
anything else that you would
absolutely.
add?
I think that one of the things is just for the people watching this is a start.
Mm.
Educating yourself. Watching this is the start of your educational journey for you to learn how to advocate. And so I applaud the people that are watching this and trying to become better people for themselves, therefore better people for this community. And I guess I just remembered a little story. I'm going to say a little story here. In regards to talking to people about their own experiences. Again, at the beginning of the video, I mentioned how I was born and raised in Honduras. And it was a few weeks ago where another therapist friend just learned that. She was like, oh, I did not know you were born and raised in Honduras. You speak fluent Spanish, you speak fluent English. I was like, oh, thank you. And then she kind of like I did not take it in a bad way or anything. And then she was like, was that like a bad thing for me to say? Like, I don't know how you took it. I was like, actually, thank you. Thank you for saying that. Like, I did not take it in a bad way. But I appreciate you kind of coming back and addressing it with me. Like, thank you for asking if it was okay. Because I've definitely had moments where people are like, oh, you look and you sound white. And I'm like, that's a microaggression right there. And it just kind of stings. But for my friend to just check in on me, for her to say like, hey, was this okay? How could I have said this better. Those are ways that that's something that impacted me. And if for some reason you feel like you've said something wrong towards someone, it's okay for you to check in and be like, hey, was that okay for me to say? Like, I'm sorry. And again, we all make mistakes, and we slowly learn how to better communicate with other people and making sure that we are respecting them as individuals. So
Yeah.
just a little side note there, but
Yeah,
yeah.
no, thank you for sharing that, because like you said, that was well put, to that it's okay for you to ask somebody if what you said was wrong, and not be how can I put this? Not be afraid to be wrong, not meaning just say things and then try to take it back, because once you say something, you can't take it back. But I feel like sometimes people don't ask other people if what they said was wrong, because they don't want to know if they were wrong. If you notice that this person is kind of like, I don't know how to take that, then, oh, I'm so sorry. Did I offend you by saying that? And if you did,
Mhm.
apologize. Or, tell them, okay, I'm sorry, teach me, how could I have said that? I'm curious to know more about the situation. I want to learn more. Um, please teach me on how to appropriately ask this, or, I don't, whatever the situation is. But I love that your friend was able to come back and say, I'm sorry, was that not appropriate? Was that not, did you take offense to that? Because she could have just been like, it might have offended her, but I don't want to be wrong, so I'm not even gonna ask.
Yeah, of course. And I didn't take offense to it at all, but the fact that she came back and said like, hey, like, I feel weird about this. Did you feel weird about this? Like, was this okay? And this happened a few weeks ago, but it has emotionally impacted me in multiple ways. So again, and just a little tiny action took 1 minute to ask me like, are you okay? Did what I said was wrong? Has impacted me and made my relationship with this person a lot stronger. So don't feel afraid to say something and make a mistake. It's it's easier to apologize than actually hurt someone and not say anything,
Right.
and for that relationship to be hindered by that one mistake. So yeah.
Well, Valeria, thank you so much once again for being here. Is there any other resources that you want to share, resources or information about yourself, or anything like that as we wrap up here?
Yeah. Well, honestly, first, just thank you for having me. This has been an amazing experience. I love you and I love what you're doing. So, to all your followers and all your listeners out there, keep watching Asia's videos. I love them. You can find me on Instagram at Therapy with Valeria. And yeah, I don't know if you want to know anything else about me. So yeah, just yeah.
Okay, well, we've talked about a lot here. Hopefully, you've learned some things. If you've learned it, please leave comments about the things that you've learned. Of course, if there's other things that you like to address, if there's something that you want to ask Valeria, if you'd like for her to come back and for us to have more conversations, of course, leave that comment as well. I'd be more than happy to bring her back. That's my girl right there. So, of course, she's more than welcome, and she will be back, actually. Um,
Yes,
um,
please.
and of course, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that stuff. Comment, like, send it to your friends, all of that stuff, and just continue to push for more equality in the workplace, in the schools, and just everywhere. Anywhere that you're seeing margin, what is it, oppression, make sure that you're speaking up. Make sure that you are checking your biases and you're doing the things that we've talked about in this video. And if you feel like you need therapy, please make sure that you are seeking therapy. This is your sign right here. So yeah, just continue watching videos, and thank you once again, Valeria, and until next time.